Chapter 11 Coben's Test. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After you choose a subject, I will arrange a bachelor of that subject as your mentor, and you will follow the bachelor as an apprentice. When you feel that you have learned enough, you can take the bachelor's exam. After passing the exam and forging the corresponding chain link, you can become a bachelor. The City of Learning no longer charges tuition, and there will be corresponding subsidies every month. The specific amount of the subsidy depends on the number of chain links you forge, and the subsidy varies depending on the number. Then, the bachelor introduced Gavin to many rules of the academy on the way, such as no drinking and no fighting, and those who violated the rules would be expelled from the academy. The two soon walked to the empty office and began to register for Gavin. Gavin touched the gold dragon in his pocket, and felt reluctant, but he still reluctantly emptied most of his wealth and handed it over to the management bachelor. Over the years, Sir Edmund gave him some pocket money from time to time. He saved 30 gold dragons by selling salt and the salary of being a guard some time ago. This money is already a lot. In Westeros, 2 silver deer are enough for a family of 3 to live for a month, and 1 gold dragon can be exchanged for 10 silver deer. The management bachelor touched the extra gold dragon, and a smile appeared on his face instantly, and he said enthusiastically, "My name is Micio, you can call me Bachelor Micio. There are still many vacant dormitories now. I will take the booklet and you can choose it yourself. I will arrange it for you after you choose it." In addition, bachelor apprentices have to ask for leave when they go out. If you want to go out in the future, just come to me directly. Have you decided which subject to choose? Do you need me to recommend it to you? I also know the situation of bachelors in various disciplines. Gavin frowned slightly, thought about it and said, "Master Micio, I want to study medicine and magic research with Master Coben." Gavin took the opportunity to put forward his request. "Your choice is good. Master Coben has made great achievements in the subject of medicine, and for the subject of magic research, I suggest you choose Master Marwan." Although most bachelors in the city do not believe in magic, it must be said that Master Marwan is the best in this subject. The key is that apprentices can only choose one subject in the first year. I suggest you choose Master Coben. He also has a dabbling in magic research. The city generally believes that he will forge Valyrian steel links sooner or later. In this way, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The management bachelor smiled and recommended patiently. "Thank you for your recommendation, Master Micio, then I will follow your advice and choose Master Coben to study medicine." Gavin said without hesitation. Master Mithro shrugged. "Okay, I'll arrange it for you. If you need help in the future, you can find me." Gavin hurriedly thanked him, and after receiving his bachelor's uniform, he took his luggage and walked towards the dormitory he chose. In the dormitory, Gavin, who had just cleaned up the room, lay on the bed, silently thinking about his plan. The school city management provides food and accommodation, but he should really consider making money. Selling technology directly is undoubtedly killing the goose to get the eggs, and building an industry by himself has neither the startup capital nor the sufficient strength to protect the industry. After a little thought, Gavin set his sights on the martial arts competition. Every year, the Tyrell family will hold a martial arts competition in the River Reach. Of course, the prize money is not as high as the one held by Robert in the plot. The prize for the first place in the lance competition is only 5,000 gold dragons, but if you want to sign up, you must at least have the status of a knight. He, a bastard, cannot participate. The first place in the group competition and the archery competition has 2,000 gold dragons, but it doesn't matter who you are, anyone can participate. Calculating the time, it will be held in 7 months. If it doesn't work, I can use some energy points to upgrade my bow to master, so I can definitely get 4,000 gold dragons. Gavin estimated his current level, and his physical fitness barely exceeds that of most knights in their prime. After all, his current body is at the age of 14, there is still a lot of room for growth. But if it comes to swordsmanship alone, Gavin is confident that he is definitely one of the best in Westeros. After all, he is not cheating for nothing. After receiving the money, Maester Micio arranged everything for Gavin the next day, and he officially became Coben's apprentice. 5 months later, in the Citadel. In a slightly dim room, Gavin was concentrating on treating the wound of an old soldier with a broken arm. The old soldier gritted his teeth, endured the pain, and sweat fell on his face like rain. Gavin's eyes were firm and focused, and the tools in his hands seemed to have life in his hands. He skillfully picked out the blackened rotten meat with tweezers, and every movement was precise and neat, without the slightest hesitation or deviation. Maester Coben stood aside, his eyes closely following Gavin's every move, and his face gradually showed an admiring expression, his eyes full of appreciation and surprise, and he couldn't help but nodded and said, "Gavin, your performance is getting better and better. At your current level, you can create a silver chain link for medicine." Gavin kept moving his hands. When he heard the praise from Bachelor Coben, he responded modestly, "It's all thanks to your good teaching, Bachelor. I still have a lot to learn." After saying that, he had a sincere smile on his face. After the operation, Gavin carefully bandaged the old soldier's wound. Bachelor Coben walked up and checked it again. He said with satisfaction, "Not bad, it's done well. Clean up and follow me to see the other injured." The two walked out of the room, and the sun shone on them. Bachelor Coben taught Gavin more experience and skills while walking. Gavin listened carefully, and from time to time used the insights and knowledge of his previous life to raise his own questions and insights. Bachelor Coben praised his thinking ability and his face was full of satisfaction. Days passed, Gavin made rapid progress under the guidance of Bachelor Coben and the help of the panel. Gradually, Coben regarded Gavin as a partner who could conduct academic research together, not an apprentice. Gavin's insights often enlightened Coben, and many problems that had troubled him for a long time were solved by Gavin's flash of inspiration. Coben even had the idea of letting this outstanding apprentice participate in his private research, but these studies were not tolerated by the Academy, so he did not dare to invite Gavin rashly. But now he has been troubled for too long, and he had no choice but to test Gavin many times. Gavin, who felt the temptation, also expressed his views on medicine many times, and also expressed his approval and catering to some experimental conjectures of magic combined with medicine proposed by Coben, especially in human experiments. Gavin did not show any resistance, and also provided a lot of suggestions for this. In Coben's study, Gavin and Coben were discussing medical knowledge. Coben kept complaining about the inaccurate human anatomy diagrams, and repeatedly proposed to the Academy to restart the relevant research on the human body, but the Academy refused every time. Chapter 12 Navigation Chart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bachelor Coben, I very much agree with your point of view. I have an idea. Our understanding of the human body is not comprehensive enough. If we don't understand it, the treatment will be biased. So I think the progress of medicine should not only study new drugs, but also understanding the human body is the basis of everything. Gavin looked enthusiastic, as if he would risk everything for medicine. Gavin, your idea is exactly what is currently ignored in medicine. However, this type of research is expressly prohibited by the Academy. As the general trend goes, we can only work hard in the two fields of drugs and methods. Coben frowning, he said helplessly. What if the city doesn't know? Bachelor? We are here for academic research and medical progress. If there are huge results, everyone will benefit. Gavin said eagerly, with excitement shining in his eyes. This idea of yours is very dangerous, Gavin. You are still very young. It is better to accumulate more knowledge and experience. You can study more theories in this area. I believe that the city will gradually change. Don't delay you. Future. Before Gavin could reply, Coben said again and waved his hand. That's it for today. I still have some medicines to deal with. I have an operation tomorrow. Remember to arrive early. Go back, Gavin. Gavin bowed respectfully and said respectfully, Yes, Bachelor, I won't disturb your work. See you tomorrow. After coming out, Gavin closed the door respectfully, rolled his eyes, and complained in his heart, Old fox, you want me to help but you don't dare to say it. It's been more than 10 days since you tried again and again, and Gavin doesn't dare to show it. It's too much. If it really scares Coben off, it will be more troublesome. In fact, in the past few months, Gavin has mastered some black information about Coben secretly using corpses for experiments, but the evidence is not sufficient. Otherwise, he can directly threaten him, which is better than being here every day. Acting is much better. Gavin returned to the dormitory, changed out of his solemn academic uniform, carefully tied his sword around his waist, and walked slowly towards the old town. The Old John Tavern was bustling with people and a mixed crowd. Most of the customers here are mercenaries and pirates traveling to the old town port, and their identities can also change randomly. The air in the tavern is filled with the smell of ale and sweat. Gavin followed the waiter into the private room and saw 5 people sitting inside. They were all mercenaries hired by ships, and they were laughing and drinking ale. The leader was tall and had a hatchet on the table. Seeing this feature, Gavin understood that this was the captain of this mercenary team, Domus Thorn. He was wearing a somewhat worn leather armor, and the scratches on it seemed to tell stories of past battles. The muscular arms were exposed, with veins protruding like winding earthworms. The blade of the hatchet shone coldly in the light. Gavin took a deep breath, walked forward, smiled and said, "You must be Captain Domus. I am Gavin Buddha." Domus smiled heartily and said, "You must be Gavin, come and sit down. Thank you in advance for curing my teammates." "I'll thank you on behalf of Luca." Gavin nodded and smiled, quickly walked to his seat and sat down. Gavin rescued a mercenary named Luca a month ago. During the communication with him, Gavin heard from John that a year ago, his team was hired by the Sea King of Bravos to explore the mysterious ruins of Valyria. Although the operation suffered heavy casualties, they were lucky enough to find a channel they could enter. To this end, their captain Domus secretly drew a simple waterway map. Gavin showed great interest in this and proposed to make a copy of 5 golden dragons. Gavin came here today precisely to find the other party to complete this deal. At this time, a sturdy mercenary with a long scar on his face put down the ale in his hand, looked at Gavin sideways and said, "I heard that you cured Luca, but the waterway map is a very precious thing. 10 gold dragons for your good treatment of Tom." His voice was rough, and his eyes were provocative, like a beast ready to pounce on its prey, wanting to test Gavin's strength. Gavin didn't answer when he saw this. He glanced at Domus first and saw that he was pretending to be nonchalant. Obviously this was what Domus meant. The price was acceptable to Gavin, so he smiled and agreed, "Okay. Then 10 gold dragons." The mercenary with the slender scar showed a disdainful smile after hearing this. "I changed my mind for 20 gold dragons." After hearing this, Gavin unconsciously clenched the sword at his waist with his left hand, suppressed his anger and said, "It seems you have no sincerity in the transaction." After hearing this, a contemptuous smile appeared on the other party's face. He glanced at Jowan sideways and smiled wildly. "Boy, do you want to use the sword? Why don't you go out with me to compete and challenge me? If you beat me, I will give you a golden dragon. Of course, if you lose, you have to pay 40 gold dragons to buy it." After hearing this, Gavin said disdainfully, "There's no need to go out, just stay here. I'll give you a move, and you make the first move." Feeling humiliated, the mercenary immediately pulled out the sword from his waist and stabbed at Gavin with an angry roar. However, in the flash of lightning, Gavin's sword was faster, and with a clang sound, his sword flew away. Before the mercenary could react, a blood mark was left on the back of his hand. Then, like lightning, Gavin's sword was placed on his neck before he could react. The private room fell silent instantly, and the other mercenaries' eyes widened with disbelief on their faces. The defeated scar-faced mercenary's face turned red, feeling ashamed and annoyed but helpless. Gavin smiled slightly, took out a golden dragon and threw it on the table. He slowly took back his sword and said, "I accept it." The mercenary gritted his teeth and said, "I was wrong. Your swordsmanship is amazing." Domus laughed and tried to smooth things over. "What do you think? I told you that this guy is good." Everyone laughed and the atmosphere became lively again. As night fell, Gavin, who had just finished copying the navigation map, chose to stay overnight in the tavern. After all, the academy has strict regulations. If the assistant maester returns too late, he will definitely be reported by the guard. In order to prevent any unexpected trouble, staying overnight in the tavern is undoubtedly a wise choice. Just now, he successfully exchanged a gold dragon for the ownership of the navigation map before nightfall. He made friends with Domus. Through chatting, Gavin found that this team was obviously a flexible transformation between robbers and mercenaries. Gavin also specifically inquired about the situation in the ruins of Valyria and the Sea of Smoke, and unexpectedly learned a lot about the division of pirate forces on the Narrow Sea, the wars between the 9 major trading city-states, and some interesting things on the continent of Essos. Chapter 13 Blood Witchcraft. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Even heard the news about the Targaryen siblings who were exiled on the other side. It was said that William Derry, who protected them, had died, and now the two were forced to wander in Bravos. Some nobles even offered a reward to the exiled Princess Daenerys to get her. But it was difficult to do it because they were the guests of the Sea King of Bravos. There will definitely be contact in the future. Gavin also planned how to get the dragon egg that Daenerys should have gotten, but I don't know if the dragon egg has been in Illyrio's hands yet. Gavin, who has no suitable plan for the time being, lay on the slightly simple and hard bed in the tavern room, his thoughts in a mess. I wonder if he changed the plot, the Night King who didn't get the dragon can break through the Great Wall. Now his biggest advantage is that he has foresight about the future plot. If he wants to change the plot, he must be cautious. Thinking about the upcoming tournament, he knew very well that this was an extremely rare opportunity, which could not only fully demonstrate his own strength, but also make a considerable fortune for himself. Unfortunately, it is difficult to get a promotion in status from the tournament. The nobles of Westeros tacitly block the upward path of the class and are always on guard against those civilians and illegitimate children. Relatively speaking, illegitimate children are okay. Some people can get recognition and help from the family to become knights, but only a very few can obtain the status of lords. Some are even regarded as a family shame and never paid attention to. Gavin's situation is relatively good. Although he met the harsh and indifferent Earl Horton Cotoyne, he also met Sir Edmund, who was full of kindness to him. The other party really considered his future and arranged a way for him to become a knight class, but this time span may be more than 10 years. If he did not have the panel, maybe he really followed the path arranged by Sir Edmund. The next morning, the warm sunlight came in mischievously through the gap in the window, gently caressing Gavin's cheek, and slowly waking him up from his sleep. He rubbed his sleepy eyes in a daze, got up and washed up briefly, then hurried back to the academy. He still had patience to deal with today. Coben, who had just finished his work, took off his mask and called Gavin. Gavin, when you are done, come to my study. Gavin bowed slightly and replied respectfully, okay, Bachelor Coben. But he muttered in his heart, I am afraid this old fox will try again, it's really endless. Although thinking so in his heart, Gavin's face did not show any dissatisfaction, and he still maintained a respectful expression. After a while, Gavin came to the outside of Coben's study. He took a deep breath, stabilized his emotions, then raised his hand and knocked on the door gently. Dong dong dong, the knocking sound echoed in the quiet corridor. Come in. Coben's voice came from the room. Gavin gently opened the door and stepped in. I saw Coben sitting at the desk, holding a few books in his hands, with a smile on his face, but there was a subtle deep meaning in his eyes. Coben looked at Gavin and said gently, Gavin, I asked you to learn more theoretical knowledge. These books should not be read by assistant bachelors, but I think with your level, you are not far from making chain links. And I can see your enthusiasm and persistence in medical research. These books involve some deep knowledge related to the human body. You can take a look. As he said, he handed the book in his hand to Gavin, and then Coben waved his hand and said, take the book back to study, but don't let others know, remember to return the book after reading it. Coben still had that seemingly kind smile on his face, but his eyes were fixed on Gavin, as if he wanted to catch something from his reaction. Gavin quickly took the book with both hands, nodded solemnly and said, thank you, master. I will not let you down and will keep my mouth shut. Coben nodded slightly, then sat back in his chair and began to organize other items on the table without looking at him. Gavin hugged the book in his hand tightly. bowed to Coben again, then turned carefully, gently left the study, and gently closed the door. After returning to the dormitory, Gavin was like a hungry beast that saw its prey, and couldn't wait to study these books. He spread the books one by one on the table, and his eyes shuttled between the pages eagerly and attentively. After a rough look at several books, 2 of them were about the exploration and research of the human body by those mysterious blood wizards, as well as detailed descriptions of all kinds of creepy evil witchcraft. Moreover, he found that there were many annotations and questions added later in the book, with neat handwriting and unique insights. He couldn't help but suspect that these were written by Coben and set questions for him. In the following 3 days, Gavin almost completely closed himself in this small research world. He forgot the passage of time, ignored the noise of the outside world, and immersed himself in the obscure but tempting knowledge in the book. He only ate simple dry food and light fruits every day, and slept only briefly when he was extremely sleepy. Finally, when the night fell on the 3rd day, Gavin's eyes, which were bloodshot due to fatigue, revealed a trace of relief and excitement. After this hard research, he probably came to a preliminary result. The book records in detail several blood sorcery techniques used by blood wizards to curse others, repair their own body functions, and even temporarily strengthen their bodies. It also contains some scattered knowledge about blood wizards. However, there is a fundamental condition for performing all these sorcery techniques, which all need to be supported by the unique blood of the blood wizard, just like his own blood and fire dragon blood that combines the fire wizard. He had read about it in the biography of the history of the Bellerys family. Among the 40 Dragon King families, another Upper Dragon King family controlled blood sorcery. Their family blood has been passed down from generation to generation, and has always retained the special abilities of blood wizards. This ability inheritance is quite similar to the fire wizard inherited by the Bellerys family in some aspects, and both rely on blood to maintain. But the ability is more sinister, evil and unpredictable. Carefully considering the contents recorded in the historical biography of the Bellerys family, it is obvious that among the upper families among the 40 Dragon King families, in addition to having the ability to control dragons, they can also control some other extraordinary abilities for a long time. It is precisely because of these that these high-ranking families are able to effectively suppress most of the Dragon King families. Chapter 14 Blood Witch Puppet Ritual. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Among these complex and complicated blood witchcraft knowledge, there is only one ritual called Blood Witch Puppet that can be used without the restriction of blood wizard bloodline. Based on the effects described in this ritual, Gavin secretly guessed that this should be the method Qyburn would use to resurrect the mountain in the future. According to the introduction in the book, first of all, a fresh corpse must be found. This corpse must be complete and the damage to the muscles and bones must be as minor as possible. Then, on the skin of the corpse, a series of mysterious and complex runes need to be carefully drawn using special materials. These runes have mysterious magic power and can guide the subsequent injection of power. The next step is to introduce special drugs and carefully inject them into various parts of the corpse to ensure that the drugs can be evenly distributed and change the environment inside the corpse. After this, the most critical moment comes. Blood and medicine containing magic power need to be slowly and steadily injected into the corpse's blood vessels, gradually replacing the original blood. During this process, there are strict requirements on the injection speed, quantity and location of each drop of blood. A little carelessness may lead to the failure of the ceremony. However, this witchcraft is not very powerful in the records of blood wizards. In most cases, it is a method used by blood wizards to create their own servants, because the puppet's strength and level are limited by its state during life, and if magic power is not injected into the puppet's body regularly, it will be difficult to maintain the puppet. The content of the ritual is extremely complicated, and the most critical part is that blood containing magic power and special medicine need to be injected into the corpse to replace the blood of the corpse itself. This step requires extreme precision and caution. A slight deviation may lead to the failure of the ritual. This is easy for a blood wizard who can control blood, but it is the biggest problem for others. Suddenly, Gavin was interested, and it was clear that Coben would later overcome these difficulties. After all, no matter how he looked at it, he didn't think that Coben himself had magic power, and the best source for injecting blood containing magic power into the blood was the master who controlled the puppet. In this way, once the Blood Witch puppet is resurrected, it will be completely loyal to its master, obey its master's orders, and completely lose itself. From this point of view, it is obvious that Qyburn's transformation of the Magic Mountain did not meet the requirements of the Blood Witch puppet. Because at the last moment, Magic Mountain had an uncontrollable obsession in his heart and chose to refuse to obey orders. Gavin looked at the list of materials and medicines listed in the ceremony intently, his eyes moving slowly over the rows of dense writing. His brows furrowed slightly, because among the many items, he could only identify some of them. However, just the materials and medicines he knew about each of them exuded the aura of being expensive and rare. Some of those herbs only grow on inaccessible cliffs or deep and mysterious ancient forests. Those strange minerals require a lot of manpower and time to be excavated from deep underground. Fortunately, if you are willing to spend money, it is not impossible to buy it. Gavin relied on his past experience and knowledge to make inferences, and the more he thought about it, the more frightened he became. He shook his head slowly, secretly guessing that the production cost of a Blood Witch puppet would never be less than 1,000 gold dragons, which was undoubtedly a staggeringly huge expense. Gavin clicked his tongue and frowned, thinking of the prize money from the tournament that he had not received yet. Even if the bonus comes as expected and falls into his pocket smoothly, after careful calculation, it is estimated that he can only barely make 4 Blood Witch puppets. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh, and his heart was full of helplessness and emotion. Making money is always the primary problem at present, and in the future, this will probably be a serious problem that I will continue to face. What is gratifying is that if my guess is accurate, the mysterious panel ability can greatly improve the strength of the flesh puppet, and can completely break away from the constraints and influence of the strength during life. This means that even a corpse with mediocre strength during life may become an extremely powerful being through the blessing of this mysterious power. The more Gavin thought about it, the more excited he became. But while he was excited, he couldn't help but worry about the future. If we want to use this method to form an undead army, the road to the future is really long and arduous. Gavin actually has many product ideas in his hands that can bring huge wealth. However, every time he thought about putting it into practice, he felt a deep sense of powerlessness in his heart. He knows very well that with his current strength and status, he cannot effectively protect the rights and interests of these commodities. Once these commodities show huge profit potential, they will inevitably attract countless greedy wolves to devour them like tender fat. Those powerful people would never let go of any opportunity to plunder, and I was completely helpless in front of them. He was already thinking about forming a partnership with a powerful person. The next day, Gavin came to Coben's study door again with those precious books in his arms. He calmed down, raised his hand and knocked on the door gently. Dong dong dong. A knock on the door sounded in the quiet corridor. Please come in. Coben's voice came from inside the house. Gavin opened the door and stepped into the study. With a polite and humble smile on his face, he bowed slightly to Qyburn and said, "Bachelor Qyburn, thank you for lending me these books." Coben smiled, nodded, and asked, "How do you understand the contents of the book?" Gavin walked to the desk and began to expound his views in an orderly manner. The two discussed in depth the various issues in the book, and the atmosphere was warm and focused. Through his knowledge far beyond this world and his feelings and understanding of magic, Gavin's ideas and thoughts surprised Coben very much, which undoubtedly solved the problem that had troubled him for a long time. The two talked for a long time, and Gavin leaned forward slightly, with a hint of expectation and sincerity in his eyes, and said to Coben, "Mr. Coben, this exchange with you has benefited me a lot. I sincerely hope that with your status as a bachelor, I can have the opportunity to read more similar magic books and further broaden my horizons and knowledge. Do you think it's okay?" Gavin rubbed his hands consciously and gently, showing his inner tension and desire. Coben leaned back in his chair, looked at Gavin with scrutiny, tapped the table lightly with his fingers, and said after thinking for a moment, "Gavin, this is not a trivial matter. Most of those books are precious and secret, and only scholars can borrow them. But it is not impossible for you to read them, but you must promise to keep the secret strictly." Coben's expression was serious and solemn. Chapter 15 Flame Blade. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gavin straightened up quickly, nodded solemnly, and said with a firm look, "Mr. Coben, don't worry. I swear on my reputation that I will never reveal a single bit. I just want knowledge, and I want to have a deeper attainment in the field of academia, and make more contributions to your and our research." Coben narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at Gavin again, and then said slowly, "Okay, since you are so determined and sincere, I agree to your request. But you must remember that if there is any mistake, you know the consequences." Gavin was so excited that his face flushed, and he bowed again and said, "Thank you for your trust and support, Mr. Coben, I will never let you down." Coben waved his hand and said, "Come to me tomorrow, I will arrange it for you." Gavin replied happily, "Yes, Mr. Coben, then I will take my leave first." After that, Gavin turned around and left the study briskly. During this period of time, Gavin devoted himself to the vast amount of magical knowledge given to him by Coben. This knowledge covers a wide range of knowledge, including fire wizards, blood wizards, shadow binders, moon singers, etc. Although most of this knowledge is seriously incomplete, and some of it only has a simple introduction, Gavin is still like a hungry fledgling, desperately absorbing the nutrients of knowledge. He studied day and night, not missing any subtle knowledge points, and the scope of knowledge is wide and complicated. In these books, Gavin was also surprised to find a spellcasting ability of the fire wizard, and fortunately obtained the recognition of the panel. In those precious books that specifically describe the fire wizard, Gavin saw several powerful and amazing magic. One of the magics called Flame Demon particularly fascinated him. According to the book, after casting this magic, the body can be completely transformed into a blazing flame, and when it changes back to the flesh from the flame form, all the injuries suffered by the body before will be magically healed. In Gavin's understanding, this is like making the body completely elementalized, and having the magical ability of immortality. It is very similar to the ability of the dragon Bellerys in the record. Unfortunately, there is only a simple introduction to the powerful Balrog. The only skill that is fully recorded and can be truly mastered by him is Flame Blade, which can attach hot magic flames to his weapons and enhance his attack power. However, he also gains some very useful fire magic skills such as flame condensation. These skills can condense the flame to almost achieve the effect of entity, or more easily change the shape of the flame. In addition, there is a potion formula that can be used for rapid treatment. The materials are not scarce, but you need to add blood-containing magic power to the potion. The stronger the magic power, the better the effect. This may be the biggest problem faced by others, but it is easy for Gavin, because his own blood contains magic power. At the same time, Coben has also made breakthrough progress in his research field. Especially for the ritual of the Blood Witch puppet, the lack of magic and the problem of replacing blood have always troubled him deeply. Now, through communication with Gavin, he finally found a clever solution. His new idea is no longer to rely on the corpse recorded in the ritual, but to boldly choose a person who is dying. This person's life state is subtly between life and death. He can accept the death magic that can only be engraved on the corpse at the moment of life's fading, and when there is still a trace of life, he can use the natural flow of blood in the body and a dropper device invented by Gavin to successfully replace the special blood. Although this innovative method has reduced the powerful effect that the flesh and blood puppet should have to a certain extent, it also brings significant advantages, because the puppet is not completely dead, and it is no longer necessary to regularly fill the puppet with magic. Gavin told him that his idea was inferred based on the method of Coben's resurrection of the mountain in the original plot. At that time, the mountain was not completely dead, but was poisoned by the red viper, causing it to be dying. Coben successfully resurrected it with this unique method. However, Coben, who had an idea, was cautious not to tell Gavin, and planned to try it after Gavin left. Both sides have always tacitly regarded these exchanges as academic explorations. Busy time always goes by quickly. Gavin, who was immersed in research, received the news of the tournament. High Court has officially announced that the tournament will be held at the beginning of next month. This event is not only to show the style of the Knights of the River Reach, but also to celebrate the 13th name day of Marjorie Tyrell, the daughter of the Duke of Mace. Gavin had to stop his research. He reluctantly put down the books and notes in his hand, asked for leave from the management bachelor Michu, and then set off for High Court. Host, Gavin. Flowers, age, 15. Bloodline, blood and fire dragonborn, development 32%. The blood of the Dragon King of Valyria, dragon riding and fire control, initial awakening, domination. Point 32, your subordinates can be upgraded through the panel. Skills, flame control, master, swordsmanship, master, flame blade, proficient, bow, master, lance, master. Energy points, 1. Automatically absorbs the magic power floating around, or actively absorbs magic power. Gavin looked at his attribute panel. His crazy research on magic during this period was finally not in vain. His bloodline development has reached 32%. Not only that, those various techniques of controlling fire directly pushed his fire control to the master level. Gavin can already light a barrel-sized flame out of thin air, which lasts for 30 minutes, and it can be compressed into any shape, so Gavin suddenly had the idea to condense the flame into an arrow and shoot it out with a bow. Although the bow was instantly scrapped and the range was shortened by half, the instantaneous explosion of the fire arrow was as powerful as a grenade in his previous life. What made Gavin most excited was that he finally mastered the first magic used for attack, although the effect of the flame blade was not satisfactory and the duration could only last for 10 minutes. After testing, he found that the combination of the sword slashing and the burning of the magic flame brought by the magic power produced extraordinary power. Even plate armor can be split with one sword, and every swing of the sword will form a hot wave of fire. It is also a pity that every time the flame blade is used, the sword will be scrapped. For this reason, Gavin, whose wallet has shrunk greatly, has been thinking about getting a Valyrian steel sword and a dragon bone bow in the future. Gavin boarded a merchant ship bound for Highgarden, and as the merchant ship set sail, it entered the Whispering Bay. The sea here was sparkling, and the sun shone on his body, bringing a touch of warmth. The breeze blew by, and Gavin felt relaxed and happy. Chapter 16 Arrival at High Court. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the merchant ship bypassed Whispering Bay, the ship headed east again when it was about to reach the Shield Islands and entered the Manda River. On both sides of the Mandeb River are dense forests and rolling hills, and the scenery is very beautiful. As the ship gradually approaches the High Garden, the golden wheat waves in the fields on both sides of the Manda River sway in the wind, and the orchards are full of fruits, exuding an alluring fragrance. You can also see some small villages and farmland along the way, where people work in the fields and live a peaceful life. Finally, the ship arrived at the inland port closest to Highgarden. The port is busy and lively, with ships passing by, loading and unloading cargo. Looking at a white castle in the distance, this magnificent castle is located on a lush hill, like a bright pearl embedded in the earth. The white city wall is tall and solid, shining with a warm light under the sunlight, as if it were carved from the purest jade. The tower towers high into the sky, its spire elegantly piercing the blue sky, as if announcing its majesty and dignity to the world. Gavin couldn't help but sigh. Highgarden is indeed known as the most beautiful castle in the world of Game of Thrones. The well-proportioned buildings, the exquisite carvings, and the harmonious layout. It was like a castle in a dream, a medieval beauty, so vividly displayed before his eyes. Under Highgarden Castle, the martial arts tournament was held, making the place bustling with activity. Like a sea of joy, the crowd was bustling and noisy. Colorful tents dotted the ground like stars. Merchants shouted at the top of their lungs to sell a dazzling array of goods. The aroma of spices and barbecue intertwined and filled the air. Jugglers tumbled and jumped in the air, winning bursts of applause. Bards played harps and sang ancient heroic legends. Children were playing among the crowd, and their laughter was as clear as silver bells. Gavin trudged through the bustling camp, only to find that there was no place to stay in the city. In desperation, he decided to find an open space in the wild, rent a tent, and build a camp. The camp was crowded and lively, with cries and laughter coming and going. Suddenly, Gavin's eyes were attracted by a flag fluttering in the wind in the distance. It was a 4-part noble family emblem flag. The upper left and lower right parts were the silver Holy Grail shining brightly on a black background, as if carrying endless glory and mystery. The lower left and upper right parts were a yellow background. The delicate black roses on the top exude unique and charming charm. His eyes lit up instantly. He had seen this flag for more than 10 years. It was the familiar flag of the Cotoin family. Gavin thought to himself, if Sir Edmund is here, it would be better to pay a visit. With this thought in mind, he walked briskly towards the camp under the flag. When he came to the gate of the camp, he found that the guard was his former subordinate Tommen. As soon as Tommen saw him, his face was immediately full of surprise, and he shouted excitedly, "Captain Gavin! I didn't expect you to be here too. Didn't you go to the academy to study?" Gavin smiled slightly and joked with a bit of ease and humor. The city does not stipulate that assistant bachelors cannot participate in the competition. After hearing this, Tommen also smiled and scratched his head, his expression showing kindness and familiarity. "By the way, Captain, Sir Edmund and Coach Ryan are here. Do you want to meet them?" Gavin's eyes flashed with anticipation and he said without hesitation, "That's why I'm here." "Tell me which tent it is in." Raman quickly pointed to a place and said, "It's over there, Captain, you can go in by yourself, I have to guard it." Gavin nodded his thanks, patted Layman's shoulder caringly, and then strode into the camp. At the same time, in the tent, Sir Edmund looked solemn, crossed his arms, paced back and forth and said, "If you can't do the joust, let me do it. This contest is about the ownership of the last disputed village, and we must not lose." Ryan sat on the chair, leaning forward with a serious expression. "Sir, the strength of the Hightower family cannot be underestimated. What will happen if you end up in danger? I have found 3 good players from the Essos continent to join the group. In the competition, all those who have been gladiators for more than 10 years can win at least 1 item." Sir Edmund stopped and frowned. "What are your considerations in choosing the archery man?" Coach Ryan nodded slightly with a firm gaze. "Sir, I will personally take part in the competition, but I still do not recommend that you participate in the competition." Sir Edmund sighed and was about to say something when the guard outside the tent came in to report Gavin's arrival. A hint of surprise flashed across Edmund's face, and he hurried out of the tent. Coach Ryan also stood up and followed his footsteps. Seeing Gavin standing outside the tent, Sir Edmund was extremely happy. He strode forward, hugged Gavin tightly, touched Gavin's head lovingly with his big hands, and said, "I haven't seen you for more than half a year. You have grown taller. Come in first." The speaker pulled Gavin into the tent together. Sir Edmund pulled Gavin to sit down and asked eagerly, "My child, how did you learn in the school city?" Gavin replied confidently, "My lord, I learned a lot. If I didn't really want to be a maester, I could make the links." Coach Ryan laughed and nodded, saying, "Gavin has always been outstanding." Suddenly, he seemed to remember something, turned around and said to Edmund, "Sir, Gavin's archery level is far better than mine. Since Gavin is here, why not send Gavin to participate in the archery competition?" Sir Edmund was slightly startled, and turned his eyes to Gavin, saying with some scrutiny and expectation, "Gavin, have you neglected your martial arts in the 6 months in the academy?" Gavin bowed and replied respectfully, "Sir, I practice diligently every day and have never slacked off." Edmund nodded. "This time, I want to send you to represent the Cotoin family to fight in the archery competition." Gavin did not answer after hearing this, but looked at Edmund and asked, "Sir, did you encounter anything?" The coach Ryan next to him hurriedly told the story. After the explanation of the coach Ryan, Gavin finally understood the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that the last ruling of the Prime Minister solved half of the problem of the 2 disputed villages of the Cotoin family and the Hightower family, but both families understood the Prime Minister's intention to deliberately leave one village unresolved and create conflicts. The 2 families, who were worried that the Prime Minister would make a fuss about this matter, negotiated for the first time. The 2 sides decided to use the ranking of this competition to determine the ownership of the disputed village. A best-of-3 system was adopted, with the winner of each round determined by the ranking of each team. Chapter 17 Testing. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. After understanding the whole story, Gavin took the initiative to say to Edmund, "My lord, I can still participate in the group competition for you, and I am very confident in my strength. I want to participate in the competition to win for you to repay your help for so many years." After hearing this, Edmund still had an anxious look on his face and firmly disagreed. "Gavin, no, the group competition is too dangerous, I can't let you take risks." The coach Ryan next to him also comforted, "Gavin, I know your strength very well, but you are still too young and have no experience. Group competitions are too dangerous and cause countless deaths and injuries every year. I have hired 3 gladiators from Essos to participate, so I think there will be no problem. Gavin saluted solemnly to Edmund and Ryan. He said seriously, "Sir, I am confident in my strength. I ask you to let me compete with these 3 gladiators. If I can beat them, please allow me to participate in the competition." Edmund frowned, his face full of hesitation. "Gavin, this is not a joke." Coach Ryan also advised, "Gavin, gladiators are not so easy to deal with. Unlike soldiers, they are very good at competitions." Gavin smiled and looked directly into Edmund's eyes. "Sir, please believe me, you will know after a try." Edmund smiled bitterly. "Okay, Ryan will go find those 3 people." Soon, 3 people came outside the tent, 2 of whom were burly and muscular, like 2 iron towers, and their thick arms seemed to be able to easily break steel. They had cold faces and fierce and fearless eyes. The other one was more agile, with a light and flexible posture, smooth muscle lines but not losing the sense of strength, and sharp and agile eyes, like a cheetah ready to catch prey at any time. Listening to Ryan's explanation, the burly gladiator who was the leader of the 3 was full of contempt and shouted at the top of his voice, "I thought there was something wrong. You wanted me to come over to compete with a kid, but you are the employer, you have the final say." He turned to the other 2 and said, "How about it, are you interested in bullying the kid?" That without waiting for the 2 to answer, Gavin, who was standing opposite, took the initiative to speak. "I suggest that the 3 of you come together. If you fight alone, you may not be able to take even 2 moves." His words were full of calmness, and his eyes flashed with confidence. When the burly man in the lead heard Gavin's words, he smiled grimly. "It seems that you are very confident, kid." Gavin just smiled, his expression was still relaxed. "I suggest that the 3 of you should take action first." As soon as these words came out, the 3 gladiators were instantly furious. No one had ever looked down on them so much. Gavin's words obviously insulted them. The extremely agile gladiator instantly drew the scimitar at his waist and attacked Gavin like a gust of wind. Gavin dodged the swift blow easily. The gladiator missed the blow and turned to swing his sword again. Gavin was not in a hurry. He turned sideways and gently lifted the sword in his hand to knock the scimitar to the ground. Seeing this, another burly gladiator swung a heavy axe at Gavin, and the axe wind whistled. Gavin jumped back and dodged cleverly, then took a step forward and stabbed out with his sword like lightning. The gladiator quickly blocked it with his axe, but his arm was numb from the shock of Gavin's sword. The last gladiator also joined the battle. He held a spear and stabbed at Gavin. Gavin moved flexibly to avoid the sharp edge of the spear, then went around behind him at a very fast speed and kicked him in the butt, causing him to stumble forward. Gavin saw the right moment, and the sword in his hand drew several graceful arcs in the air. As the sword shadows crossed, the 3 gladiators fell to the ground one after another, and their weapons were scattered all over the ground. Gavin sheathed his sword, calm and composed, as if this battle was just an easy exercise for him. Most of the soldiers watching in the camp knew Gavin, and seeing that Gavin was so powerful, they all cheered loudly and cheered for him. Edmund and Ryan, who were watching the battle, were also stunned. They never thought that Gavin was so strong. Coach Ryan smiled bitterly and said, "Gavin, you seem to have let me off when you were sparring with me before." Edmund, who had improved Gavin's strength, seemed to have suddenly thought of something important. His expression tensed and he interrupted, "Gavin, how is your lance level?" Gavin saluted and said respectfully, "Sir, my lance level is slightly inferior to my swordsmanship. Do you want me to participate in the lance competition?" Then he added, "Sir, as far as I know, I can't sign up for the lance competition." Edmund laughed, patted Gavin on the shoulder and said, "These are all trivial matters. Generally speaking, only knights and noble children can participate in the lance competition, but if you represent the nobility and are sent by the nobility, you are not subject to this restriction." This news was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise for Gavin. His eyes instantly burst into excitement. After all, he had been coveting the 5,000 gold dragon prize for a long time, and there were many people who were knighted by participating in the lance competition. His voice was trembling with excitement, and he quickly volunteered, "Sir, please send me to participate in the lance competition as well." Edmund laughed heartily and agreed without hesitation. Immediately afterwards, he raised his voice and ordered loudly to the people around him, come on, let me announce that I am going to hold a banquet in the camp to celebrate the return of my nephew Gavin from the school city." As soon as he said this, everyone present showed their faces. The look of surprise, this is obviously the first time that Edmund has publicly acknowledged Gavin's identity as his nephew in front of everyone. A small banquet was being held in the Cotoin family's camp tent. Edmund was hugging Gavin with a joyful smile on his face. Several nobles who had a good relationship with Edmund also came to participate, sitting in the big tent talking and laughing. At this time, the guard at the door loudly announced, "Lord Willis Tyrell of the Tyrell family has arrived." Willis Tyrell was slowly pushed in a wheelchair, and Edmund hurriedly pulled him. He picked up Gavin, hugged his shoulders affectionately and said, "Come on, let me introduce you to my good friend, the future Duke of Tyrell. He is the eldest son of the Duke of Metz and the heir of the Tyrell family." Although Willis Tyrell was disabled, he still had a noble temperament, with a gentle smile on his face and nodded to everyone. Edmund greeted him warmly and hugged him tightly. His joy at meeting an old friend was beyond words. Later, Edmund brought Gavin to Villas and introduced them to each other. Chapter 18 The Unexpected Champion. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Gavin politely saluted Willis and said, "Nice to meet you, Lord Willis. My name is Gavin Flowers." Willis also smiled and responded, "I heard Edmund talk about you before. I didn't expect you to be so good at swordsmanship at such a young age." Then, the three of them walked into the banquet together. At the banquet, Gavin and Willis sat next to each other. Willis talked to Gavin just out of politeness at first, but as the conversation deepened, the two chatted more and more happily. Willis was surprised to find that although Gavin was young, he spoke maturely and steadily. Whether it was the analysis of the current situation or the insight into human nature, Gavin could always come up with novel and unique insights, as if there was a treasure trove of wisdom hidden in his mind, especially when talking about the problem of territory development. The solutions proposed were both pragmatic and forward-looking. Willis looked at Gavin, his eyes full of appreciation and admiration. Gavin's clear logic and unique insights impressed Willis. Each point Gavin expounded was well-organized and well-reasoned, which made his words seem to have an invisible magic that could make people immersed in it involuntarily. Willis thought to himself, "This person is really a rare talent. If he can be brought to the Tyrell family, he will definitely add a strong helper to the family. Unfortunately, he is a bastard." Willis' mind began to turn rapidly, thinking about how to impress Edmund so as to dig him from his friend. The banquet soon came to an end. Before leaving, Willis invited Edmund and Gavin, saying, "After the archery and group competition, the castle will hold a banquet to celebrate my sister's 13th name day. Edmund, remember to bring Gavin with you." Edmund smiled and agreed. In the spacious and independent tent, Gavin was carefully wiping his equipment. Sir Edmund specially prepared a well-made hard bow for him. At this time, Tommen gently lifted the curtain of the tent and walked in. "Captain, I've found out." Tommen said. Gavin stopped what he was doing and looked up at him. "What do you mean?" "The odds of you winning the archery competition are 1 to 10. If it's a group competition, the odds are 1 to 10, and if you are the only winner, the odds can reach 1 to 20. Tommen finished speaking in one breath, with a complicated expression on his face, showing both surprise at the high odds and concern about Gavin's prospects in the competition. Without waiting for Gavin to speak, Tommen hurriedly said, "Captain, do you really want to bet everything?" Gavin said without hesitation. "Bet." Tommen frowned and looked embarrassed. "But, Captain, this risk is too great. If..." Gavin interrupted him. "There is no if, risks and opportunities coexist, I have confidence." Tommen looked at Gavin's resolute expression and gritted his teeth. "Okay, Captain, listen to you, and the brothers will also take out all their wealth to support you." Gavin patted Tommen on the shoulder. "Don't worry, I won't let you down." Tommen nodded and turned to arrange the betting. Gavin continued to organize his equipment, his eyes full of confidence, this time participating in the competition for the family. no matter what the result is, there is danger. Sir Edmund specially gave Gavin 1,000 gold dragons as a reward for his fighting for the family. Gavin, who happened to hear about the gambling, did not hesitate to ask Tommen to inquire, and invested all his money in himself, hoping to double his wealth. At this time, Gavin had made full preparations, waiting for the moment of the competition to come, so that his wealth would increase significantly. In a large open space in front of the High Court, the sun shines on this open space, outlining a golden color. This is where the archery competition is held. Under the castle, a huge stand is built high, like a towering mountain. On the stand, the nobles are dressed in gorgeous clothes, talking elegantly or watching the field below with interest. The rules of the competition are clear and clear. The contestants must first face the target 100 steps away, and each person has 5 shooting opportunities. For all the players who hit the target will move back 10 steps, and the target will be reduced by a circle, and this will be repeated until the last remaining player is the champion. Ready to shoot. The referee's voice sounded like a bell. Gavin, standing on the field, listened to the referee's command and bent his bow to shoot arrows. His posture was as straight as a pine tree, and his eyes were firm and focused. He was calm and focused, as if all the noise around him had nothing to do with him. His beautiful silver hair fell on his shoulders like a waterfall, shining with a charming luster under the sunlight. This silver hair complemented his handsome appearance and upright heroic posture, attracting the noble women in the stands. They asked each other about the identity of this player. Vilas, who was also sitting in the stands, teased Edmund and said, it seems that your nephew is very charming. Look at these ladies, they are all fascinated by him. Edmund heard this, and a proud look appeared on his face, and he smiled and responded, of course, this is the blood of my family. As the game progressed, Gavin's performance was amazing. Every time he pulled the bow, it was steady and powerful, and every arrow seemed to be given life, flying accurately to the target. This continued until the 180th step, when the target had turned into a cup-sized disc that was barely visible even with the naked eye. At this time, there were only 2 people left on the field, and Gavin was one of them. He took a deep breath and adjusted his breathing and rhythm. At this moment, Gavin was already feeling a little tired. If he still couldn't decide the winner when he reached 200 steps, he might have to use the precious energy points he just got. Gavin held the bow tightly in his hand, staring at the distant and tiny target, with fine beads of sweat oozing out of his forehead. He silently calculated the distance and angle in his mind, thinking about how to complete this almost impossible challenge without using energy points. At this time, his opponent was also struggling, and his slightly trembling hands exposed his inner tension and anxiety. Suddenly, several girls in the stands shouted Gavin's name with flushed faces, and the shouts one after another were like waves. This behavior made the opponent's condition worse. The opponent's already tense nerves became more fragile in the cheers, and his hands began to tremble uncontrollably. As a result, he missed the target with 1 arrow. Gavin looked at his opponent's state, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and thought to himself, I never thought I could win the championship just by relying on my looks. He shook his head helplessly, feeling a little helpless about this special help, but it did not affect the joy of winning the championship. Chapter 19 Plan. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. That night, Sir Edmund held another celebration banquet in the camp to celebrate the Cotoin family's victory in the archery competition. Gavin, who was attending the banquet, was absent-minded, and his eyes drifted to the door from time to time. Until he saw Tommen lift the curtain and wave to him, he hurriedly apologized to Sir Edmund and ran out. The two ran all the way back to Gavin's tent. Captain, we are rich, Tommen said excitedly, and he pulled out a leather bag from under the bed with great effort. Gavin opened it hastily. How much is in it? A total of 13,000 gold dragons. You bet 1,000 gold dragons, and the brothers chipped in and bet 300 gold dragons together. Tommen said excitedly, his eyes full of excitement, we are really going to make a fortune now. Go and ask the brothers to come to me to collect the money, keep my share, and divide the rest among you. After saying that, Gavin looked at Tommen, who was motionless, and asked, What's wrong? Tommen said, There is bad news, your odds in the group competition have dropped. how much is it? Gavin had a bad feeling. Tommen quickly replied, 1:5 for independent champions, 110. Not bad, barely acceptable. Gavin thought silently in his heart, and said to Tommen, after you receive the gold dragons, bet all my gold dragons and the bonus I just received on me to win the championship independently. As for whether you want to follow suit, make your own decision. Captain, there is no need to divide it. Everyone has discussed it and will continue to follow you to bet. Tommen said with a firm face. Gavin patted Tommen on the shoulder, smiled and said, okay, you go and do it. Believe me, it will definitely make everyone rich. Tommen nodded heavily, turned around and strode away to take care of this matter. Gavin looked at his back, silently calculating how much money he could make from this competition. I thought that the money for making the Blood Witch puppet was settled, and then sighed again. Now the corpse has become the top problem. He frowned and paced back and forth in the tent, thinking about how to solve the source of corpses in his mind. The Reach has been peaceful for a long time. Where can we get enough corpses without arousing suspicion? Should we go to the Narrow Sea or Essos to be a mercenary for a while? If we go, there are two advantages. First, the source of corpses can be solved. There are many pirates in the Narrow Sea, and several city-states on Essos often confront each other, and there are Dothraki looting, which is extremely chaotic. Second, the successfully made Blood Witch puppets will not arouse other people's suspicion. It can be said that they are guards loyal to him brought back from Essos. The more Gavin thought about it, the more he felt that this plan was feasible, and he gradually made up his mind. But at the same time, he also knew that this long journey would inevitably be full of certain risks, but the strong desire still drove him to make up his mind to make a breakthrough. Gavin, who suppressed his complicated thoughts, hurried back to the banquet. After all, he was the protagonist of this banquet today, and it would not be appropriate to leave for too long. Perhaps he was too happy, and Edmund was already drunk at this time. He was seen holding Sir Ryan with one hand, laughing non-stop, and it was unknown what interesting things the two were talking about. Seeing Gavin, who had just entered the big tent, he hurriedly waved to him and pulled Gavin to drink again. At the end of the banquet, Sir Edmund was so drunk that he could not walk steadily. Gavin had no choice but to help him back to the tent with the servants. After putting him on the bed, Gavin was about to leave, but suddenly found that his forearm was tightly held by Edmund. At this time, his eyes seemed to be much clearer. Edmund, who borrowed some strength, tried to sit up, took the glass of water handed over by the servant and drank it, and pointed to the box next to Gavin. I originally planned to give it to you after you come of age, but I think you need it more now, and I think it belongs to you. Gavin was full of doubts, with deep suspicion in his eyes, and he racked his brains but couldn't guess what Edmund meant. Edmund stretched his head towards the box, indicating Gavin to open it. With strong curiosity, Gavin slowly walked to the box, bent down, and gently lifted the lid. Instantly, a set of plate armor came into Gavin's eyes, and the reflection of the metal was particularly dazzling in this dim environment. This is a set of exquisite plate armor. Each smooth piece of armor is engraved with patterns, and the connection between the armor pieces is tight, showing the superb craftsmanship of the maker. The sword accompanying it has a slender and straight blade, and a red gem is carefully inlaid on the hilt, which is dazzling. The blade is so sharp that it can break hair, and it faintly exudes a chilling breath. Gavin was deeply attracted by the equipment in front of him, and his eyes were full of surprise. This was made for your father when he celebrated his coming-of-age ceremony. Now it belongs to you. At this time, Edmund had slowly stood behind Gavin. Gavin closed the box and hurriedly said, "My lord, this is too precious." Edmund smiled and waved his hand and said, "Take it back, I just hope it can protect you in the future." "That's it, I need to rest, kid." Then he lay back on the bed. With the help of Tommen, Gavin put on the full set of armor. The whole set of armor was finely crafted and very practical. There was a hook on one side of the armor specifically for placing spears. Obviously, this set of armor was very expensive. Although Gavin is only 15 years old this year, he is tall and this set of armor fits him very well. Looking at himself in the mirror, a trace of warmth surged in his heart. Sir Edmund, in Gavin's heart, is like a warm beacon. Apart from his mother, Sir Edmund is the best person in the world to him. the identity of a bastard has never been a reason for Sir Edmund to dislike him. On the contrary, Sir Edmund cares for him everywhere, cultivates him carefully, and does not hold back. This deep friendship makes Gavin feel endless warmth in this complicated world. Time soon came to the time for the group competition to begin, still in the open space in front of the castle. The Tyrell family used logs to enclose a circular space with a diameter of 500 meters, a height of less than 1 meter and more than 20 entrances and exits. Let any contestant who wants to give up can leave easily. According to the rules of the group competition, a team shall not exceed 5 people. Coach Ryan wanted to send another veteran to join, but Gavin refused. Gavin held up his spear and walked into the venue with 3 hired gladiators, with the flag of the Cotoin family hanging on his spear. Soon, the venue was packed with more than 200 people, all wearing armor, holding weapons, and clinging closely to their teammates. Chapter 20 Group Competition. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Gavin glanced around and soon noticed the Hightower family opposite. The man holding the gun and flag was a tall soldier, with 4 people on his side protecting him faintly. They all wore fine plate armor, as if feeling something. The man holding the gun flag also looked at Gavin's team. That gaze penetrated the crowd and met Gavin's gaze in the air, as if invisible sparks were instantly created. The referee rode slowly to the center of the field and announced the rules loudly, but no one in the field was interested in listening. Everyone's nerves were tense to the extreme. The heavy atmosphere made it almost difficult to breathe, and the tense atmosphere filled every inch of the air. Afterwards, the referee left the field on horseback. As he went further and further away, the tense atmosphere became more intense, like an invisible net that tightly bound everyone. The moment he completely left the field, the official horn of the competition suddenly sounded, instantly igniting the raging flames of war. Several closely related families began to move closer slowly and cautiously, trying to gather stronger strength in this way in order to protect themselves and eliminate other opponents first in this fierce competition. When the other relatively weak teams witnessed this scene, they obviously knew very well that they must not let the other party's plan of aggregation succeed. So, they immediately launched an attack without hesitation. Teams further away also pounced on the team next to them that they thought they were sure to win. A team on Gavin's left suddenly attacked, and saw a fierce warrior holding a spear, stabbing straight at Gavin, who was holding a gun flag like a poisonous snake coming out of its hole. The spear made a sharp sound, and it was obviously going to kill Gavin with one blow. However, before the 3 gladiators could recover from the sudden attack, Gavin had already reacted at an alarming speed. I saw him flashing forward, the spear in his hand flying out of the sea like a dragon, accurately and powerfully flying off the opponent's helmet. Immediately afterwards, Gavin waved his arm, and the spear hit the opponent with thunderous force, knocking the man unconscious to the ground in an instant, and he didn't even have time to let out a scream. The 3 gladiators behind him immediately took action and attacked the opposing team. Gavin didn't hesitate at all and rushed towards the battle at a jaw-dropping speed. His movements were extremely fast and violent. The spear in his hand was stabbing, picking, sweeping or slashing. Each move contained tremendous power. In just the blink of an eye, the opponent was knocked to the ground neatly. Those who fell to the ground, some groaned in pain, and some fainted directly, leaving a mess. Several nearby teams that were closer to Gavin were horrified after witnessing their performance, and quickly moved away from Gavin's location, for fear of becoming his next target. The melee broke out completely, and the place was in chaos. The shouts of killing and the clash of weapons were intertwined and deafening. Seeing that no one was approaching, Gavin and others chose to wait for work and stood quietly aside, observing the situation on the field. The Hightowers did not attack the other teams, but immediately formed a defensive formation, and they had many allies. Behind him, on his left, and on his right, there was a team. Although they were not too close to each other, they had a tacit understanding. They helped each other block sneak attacks from behind, forming a relatively stable defensive position. Slowly, the situation on the field became somewhat stalemate. There are as many as 4 or 5 teams gathered together like the Hightowers. One of the teams holding the hunter flag was particularly strong. It defeated 2 teams on its own. Now it has gathered 2 teams of allies, with as many as 13 people. No one dared to approach them for a while. At this time, They were less than 30 meters away from Gavin's location. He saw Gavin standing motionless next to him. This team did not hesitate at all, as if they had seen new prey. They charged directly towards Gavin and others. Seeing this, Gavin and the others rushed forward without hesitation. The pace of both sides was rapid, their eyes revealed a fierce look, and a fierce confrontation was about to take place. On the main stand, a group of nobles were watching the battle. Under a hunter's flag, Randall Tully looked at his eldest son Sam beside him, and saw that his face was pale and his body was shaking uncontrollably. He was obviously frightened by this bloody scene. His chubby face was full of fear, his fat muscles were trembling slightly, and his thick arms were shaking. Randall Tully saw this and angrily yelled, "You useless thing! Don't bring this coward here and tarnish the reputation of my family." After saying that, he turned his head angrily and looked at next to him was his second son Dickon. I saw the second son staring at the battlefield with bright eyes, showing no fear. Randall Tully couldn't help feeling annoyed, and sighed secretly, why is Dickon not the eldest son? Why are the 7 gods so unfair, giving me such a cowardly heir? Then he patted Dickon on the shoulder, pointed to the hunter's flag that was charging towards Gavin and others, and said seriously, "Dickon, that represents the motto of our family, I am the pioneer. Remember, the Tully family's the glory lies in this, no matter what kind of enemy you face, you must always charge forward." Now he has completely given up on his eldest son's cowardice. Fortunately, he still has a qualified younger son to train. Earl Tully was about to continue preaching, but was stopped abruptly by Dickon's sudden exclamation. Landau immediately looked at the field and saw that facing an enemy that was far more than double their number, Gavin and others actually launched a countercharge, and the two teams collided in an instant. One of the young men, like a ghost, quickly rushed into the enemy's formation with a spear in hand. The tip of the spear was like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue, stabbing left and right, and instantly disrupted the enemy's formation. The enemy soldiers responded in panic, but they could not stop his attack at all. Then, the young man actually abandoned his spear and drew his sword, and the sword in his hand seemed to have turned into a messenger of death. His swordsmanship was superb, and his sword was as sharp as the wind. Every sword stabbed accurately at the vital points. His figure shuttled through the crowd, and the sword rose and fell, and blood splattered. Even if they fought hard, their moves seemed so clumsy in front of the boy's powerful swordsmanship. The boy's sword was like lightning, passing again and again, and the soldiers fell one after another, unable to resist the violent attack. The remaining personnel stepped back unconsciously, and their morale had collapsed. In just a moment, the tough team that no one dared to approach before had fallen to the ground. The boy's armor was covered with blood, but he did not show any signs of fatigue, but instead exuded a chilling momentum. The field was filled with a strong smell of blood, and the shouts of killing seemed to become weaker at this moment. The young man stood proudly among the corpses, like a god of war descending to the world, which made people feel awe.